half the time, you're thinking of the past or you're worried about the future. So stay here. Like that. Can't imagine how many lives that has saved. The inhale, exhale.
Gang Badoy Capati, thank you so much for joining us here on So Jannelle. We wanted to invite you here because I know that you're a mental health advocate in the Philippines, but not only that, taking it a step further, more specialized toward athletes. But now the good work that you've done for Heidelin, our first ever Olympic gold medalist, right? And I know that you had a big part in building mental fortitude in her.
I don't think there's a size to it. I think everybody who contributed to Heidelin's state of stability and the building of condition, we all contributed to that. But majority, that's all her. But what we did is provide her a venue. I run a group called Project Steady Asia. It's the mental health program of RockEd, which is the nonprofit that I run. I met Heidelin right from Rio pa. When the pandemic struck, they announced that the Olympics might not push through. This is where our adventure together started because she was really spinning. Please remember, if you're an Olympian, you have a time span that you work on. The Olympics is only every 4 years, we know that. So it means you have to reach peak condition when the games come. So when Heidelin found out in March, less than 6 months prior to the Olympics she was working for since Rio, she said, "Whoa, I'm already reaching peak condition and now it's not gonna happen." So the heartbreak, the confusion. So I called out for a schedule, MWF, for on Zoom, and I sent out the link to people who were interested that there's a mental wellness space just to handle the first foray into the lockdown. So we discussed small things. So basically, I built a community around Heidelin. Also, Rubilen, Amit, our two-time world champion in billiards, and Coach Heidi, who's a basketball coach. So a few of the athletes I was working with and the coaches, I wanted to absorb them from a seminar they were attending on Zoom, and that hindi mag-stop yon because for athletes repetition is comforting. So we formed a community, MWF 10 a.m. every, I've never even done anything that regular in a long time because my schedule is sporadic. But when the pandemic started, I realized what will comfort people the most in this uncertain era is that there is a schedule, there is a set thing, there will be people on the other end of the line. When you log into a Zoom room, I'm there, Yana's there, my friends are there. There are people and they're live and you can talk to them. So 3 times a week, 10 a.m., every day, I mean, every week, walang mintis, walang absent. I was such a horrible student when I was younger. This is probably the best attendance record I've ever had in my life. Basta mag-log in si Heidelin, we're there. On some days, she's working out. We can see her do sit-ups and she's still on Zoom. The camera's on her. Nagkikwento kami. And in between, she'll interrupt and say, "Uy, ako rin," ganyan. So what happened was, we ended up being a community of people, different people, not all athletes, that she can constantly talk to. So she has access to us, she can ask us questions. For me, the the most what's the word? The most edifying, one of the more edifying stories of that stretch of time, because we still need MWF. Uh, we still do because we're working towards the World Games. These Olympians, they don't stop. As as soon as they finish the gold, okay, what's next? What happened was, my most edifying moment at that time was when I had one member of the community go into a breakup. Parang bagong break, she was so heartbroken and she was sharing her pain, I suppose, for losing someone. And it was Heidelin giving her love advice, like, alam mo, don't call him back, don't get, And I just watched and I realized, oh, when Heidelin is giving, when Heidelin is generous, she is strongest. And so she doesn't need me like an andador. What's andador in English? Walker. She doesn't need me as a guide. She just needed a venue where she can be generous in other aspects, not just the sport. So I'd see her give advice to people, give reactions like, "Ay, grabe, they did that to you." She became the listener. And then I realized, wow, this is the mental health care that is outside the clinic, very unconventional. There is a space for her, and everybody else benefited from it. Everybody benefits from a non-judgmental community. So that's how we supported Heidelin. We were a space where she could go to at any time. In fact, one of the jokes is, and eventually it wasn't a joke anymore. Anytime you feel alone, go on Viber, message us, we'll go on Zoom, no matter what time. And we did that. Like, I really need to Zoom now. Joke, everybody who was free will log in. And why? What happened? Are you okay? And just that alone, that you're not, just that action alone to make the other person feel may kasama ako,
Right.
I think that's mentally strengthening.
So two things, no. I want to talk about the s- strengthening our mental health by talking to kumbaga
Other
somebody
people.
who was trained to do it, like somebody like you trained to do it, right? Versus talking about mental health to just other people, because there's two things also. You hear of people saying, "Why will I pay a trained professional to listen to my problems when I can do that with a friend?"
So with a friend, yeah, by all means, sorry. But what I need you to know is your stories are so precious, very fragile. I want you to turn over your stories, especially of your pain or joy, to people who will take care of it. When you go to a trained listener, aka psychotherapist, counselor, mental health clinician, bottom line of that is a non-disclosure agreement. There is a legal binding agreement that everything shared is confidential, therefore kept safe, right? Just that assurance alone might encourage you to be raw and honest. And why do I say might? Because by default, we are so defensive of ourselves, rightly so, to protect our hearts. Actually, we conceal certain things, we don't reveal everything. We want to stay liked, so we don't really say all our dirty laundry out. But with a trained professional, that's my job, that's our job. And I have good news. A lot of psychotherapists are trained to have listened to the worst stories. So whatever worst thing you've done, either we've heard it or it's nothing. Because we're not your moms, we're not your friend, I'm not your girlfriend, I'm not your wife. There's no space almost for judgment, none. Halos zero. When I listen to someone, please remember I trained in the maximum security prison. So I kind of covered a large range of the stories that can possibly be brought up in a psychotherapy session. I have learned to just say, "Oh, okay, wow, that was a mistake. Do you regret it? What are the consequences?" So that's the difference. And when there is someone trained to absorb your truth, no matter how ugly or how beautiful, to absorb your truth, we can sift through it better. When it's your friend or a loved one, they will have agendas. Beautiful agendas naman, because they love you, they want you to stay safe. They don't they don't want you hurt. So a lot of times our friends will be very careful with what they say. Or when you say, "We broke up, he broke up with me," they'll say, "He didn't deserve you. I never liked him." We always say the wrong things because that's probably not what should be said. What should be said could be, "That's awful. I'll sit with you. How are you feeling now? Did you have lunch? Okay, what's the next step? Go ahead, cry." I mean, that's so rare, but we can do that even as non-trained professionals. So I hope you took note of that.
Yeah, no. So you're talking. So now we covered no, how building mental toughness helped Heidelin, right?
Yeah.
And now we covered, the difference between like a science-backed, professionally trained mental counselor, right, or therapist. But my another thing that I wanted to ask you was, when you're talking like that, and it seems like you've built a community around Heidelin, and now there's explaining the difference, right, between a professionally trained counselor and a friend, right? How is now taking care of mental health being perceived in the Philippines?
This is the gift of the Olympics to us, I think, seriously. With Naomi Osaka's narration, Simone Biles, I like the courage that she showed that it's all right. You know, Heidelin publicly saying, I was almost at a mental breakdown when they said there was no Olympics. Just to say it comfortably and yet come out excelling, she goes to show that mental health support is not just for the nuts or the crazy or insane or ill-behaved. It's also for very statistically normal people in order to get to our function zero so that we can excel. We did not enhance the performance of Heidelin. We restored it. We restored it. Mental health support does not enhance your performance as an athlete. It restores you to zero, and you can take care of yourself naturally to excel from there.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that story with us about Heidelin and clarifying what you did for her, right? Or what you guys, your team, did for her. But also, I like what you said about how it's not an on and off button. Being well is not you're on or you're off. You're not well, right? It's a range, right? And also, I think it's good to note that mental health requires work. You can't have people do it for you. You have
Absolutely.
to do the work, right? Even
Mm.
mental health professionals, right? They guide you through it, but it has to be you that's going to be making the decisions. It has to be you that's correcting your mistakes or realizing whatever you need to realize in order to change that. Now, with that said, what tips can you give to our viewers right now that are watching? How do you take care of mental health?
The tip is, if you have a behavior that you don't understand, ask yourself, where is this from? What am I afraid of? Why am I not doing this? Am I protecting myself from something? Because a lot of our behavior is protective. By instinct, we are protective. When you touch fire, as a child, even without words, your brain and nervous system remembers that the fire is hot. I mean, you have all these instincts and reflexes from previous experiences. So you need to sift through it.
That's sitting with yourself. You need to be comfortable to sit with yourself.
When you shower, that's the underutilized mental health moment, really. This is the time you can actually reflect, why did I do that? Wow, it's gonna be a good morning. Okay, but what do we do when we shower? We gotta get to my meeting at 9. You're not yet in your meeting at 9. You're already thinking of your meeting at 9. You're missing out on the lovely scent of your soap. So stay in the shower. And your best tool is your breathing. You will inhale 4 counts, sharp. Hold it for 7. And then exhale for 8 counts. Like super tagal. And I'll tell you why. The secret is in the long exhale. Even if you don't feel comforted, you will somehow calm down. Also, cry if you have to. It will make you exhale long. That's why it's comforting, because you, right? So Heidelin, you saw how sure she did it, right? Right? So, and you can't do that without the breath. So, yeah, oxygen is your friend.
Perfect. Thank you so much, gang. I hope this is the start of many conversations with you.
Bye.